15th. For long before the birth of Dhruva, the son of one of the youngest queens had been promised the throne, and the coming of the new child would undo this claim, since the son of the principal queen was undoubtedly the king's true heir. Answer. The son of one of the youngest queens had been promised the throne. This was long before the birth of Dhruva. The son of the principal queen was undoubtedly the king's true heir. The coming of the new child would, therefore, undo this claim. 16th. As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he well knew the old, cold stare of refusal in their eyes. Answer. They had stopped to wait for him, so he came to them. There was the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes. He knew it well, yet he could not suppress the desire of his heart. 17th. My first application was to a city scrivener who had frequently offered to lend me money when he knew I did not want it. Answer. There was a city scrivener. He had frequently offered to lend me money, but I did not want it then. He knew this. My first application was to him. 18th. Some astronomers think that the bright rays that may be seen in the moon mark cracks in the surface which were formed in her early days when she was still very hot. Answer. Bright rays may be seen in the moon. They mark cracks in her surface. These cracks were formed in her early days. The moon was still hot then. Some astronomers think so about the rays. Page number 445. 19th. I could not but feel sorry for the old man who, once very rich, was now deserted by all and was lying on sick bed in his lonely hut. Answer. The old man had been once very rich, but he was now deserted by all. He was lying on sick bed. It was in his lonely hut. I could not but feel sorry for him. 20th. Milton wrote epic poetry, which is a series of narrative poetry, and neither the species nor the genius is very well understood at present. Answer. Milton wrote epic poetry. It is a series of narrative poetry. The species is not very well understood at present. The genus also is not very well understood at present. 21st. A yellow beam of sunlight filtering through the muslin curtains slanted onto the table, where a matchbox, half open, lay beside the inkpot. The beam of sunlight was yellow. It filtered through the muslin curtains. It slanted onto a table. A matchbox lay on the table. There was the inkpot beside the matchbox. The matchbox was half open. 22nd. Equipped with a dazzling sword, studded with a diamond on its hilt, which has been bequeathed to him by his forefathers, the Sultan rode on a milk-white stud and rushed towards the gate of the fortress. Answer. The Sultan was equipped with a sword. It was dazzling. It has diamonds on its hilt. It was bequeathed to him by his forefathers. He rode on a milk-white stud. He then rushed towards the gate of the fortress. 23rd. Everybody should learn how to swim, because swimming is a fine exercise and is often the means of saving one's own life. Answer. Swimming is a fine exercise. it is often the means of saving one's own life. So everybody should learn how to swim. 24th. When the minister went to the palace and wanted to see the king, the guard at the door refused to admit him to the presence of the king, who was busy. Answer. The minister went to the palace. He wanted to see the king. The king was busy, so the guard at the door refused to admit him to the presence of the king. 25th. One morning, when the giant was lying awake in bed, he heard some music which sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it to be the king's musicians passing by. Answer. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed. At that time he heard some music. It sounded very sweet to his ears. He thought it to be king's musicians passing by. 26. Afraid of facing the danger that awaited him there, he left the place in the darkness of night and escaped into a village not far off. Answer. A danger awaited him there. He was afraid of facing it, so he left the place. This he did in the darkness of night. He escaped into a village. The village was not far off. 27. One person was killed and several others sustained bullet injuries when the police fired on a mob obstructing the laying of railway tracks in Jamshedpur. Answer. A mob obstructed the laying of railway tracks in Jamshedpur. The police fired on them. One person was killed. Several others sustained bullet injuries. Page number 446, 28th. On a snowy evening, the poet on horseback stopped by the lovely woods that deeply moved him, but he left the place because he had to go miles before falling asleep. Answer. It was a snowy evening. The poet was on horseback. He stopped by the lovely woods. The woods deeply moved him. He had to go miles before falling asleep, so he left the place. 29th. Having understood that it was his own fault of forbidding the garden to the children which had stopped spring from entering, the repentant giant tore down the proclamation. Answer. The giant forbade the garden to the children. This had stopped spring from entering it. He understood that it was his own fault. He became repentant. He tore down the proclamation. 30th. I was one of the few who were saved when the Titanic began to sink as it hit an iceberg when sailed into heavy mist. Answer. The Titanic sailed into heavy mist. It hit an iceberg. It began to sink. Few were saved. I was one of them. 31st. On a dark night, Subhash Chandra Bose set out from home in disguise to escape into Germany, where he wanted to organize a strong army to fight against the British. Answer. It was a dark night. Subhash Chandra Bose set out from home. He was in disguise. He was to escape into Germany. He wanted to organize a strong army there. This army was to fight against the British. 32nd. As we reached the Heritage Building with the desire of visiting the interior, we found the building closed, it being a scheduled weekly holiday, and we felt much disheartened. Answer. We reached the Heritage Building. We had a desire of visiting the interior. We found the building closed. It was a scheduled weekly holiday. We felt much disheartened. 33. Hearing a girl cry for help, a youth plunged into the water and managed with great difficulty to bring her to shore. Answer. A girl cried for help. A youth heard it. He plunged into the water. He managed to bring her to shore. He did it with great difficulty. 34. Seeing that his end was near, Hamlet suddenly stabbed his uncle with the poisoned sword and avenged at last the murder of his father. Answer. His end was near. Hamlet saw this. He stabbed his uncle suddenly with a sword. The sword was poisonous. He at last avenged the murder of his father. 35. Seeing the approach of a violent dust storm, the workmen took shelter in a hut not far from the corner of the field. Answer. The violent dust storm was approaching. The workmen saw it. They took shelter in a hut. The hut was not far from the corner of the field. 36. A metro railway employee, Biswajit Biswas, pulled back a woman attempting to jump to her death at the Taliganj station, but fell off the edge of the platform himself and was killed. Answer. It was at the Taliganj station. A woman attempted to jump to her death. Biswajit Biswas was a metro railway employee. He pulled back the woman. He fell off the edge of the platform himself. He was killed. Page number 447. 37. There are some persons whose smiles, the sound of whose voice, whose very presence, seem like a ray of sunshine, brightening the whole room, which just a minute ago seemed all dull and dingy. Answer. There are some persons, their smiles, the sound of their voice, and their very presence seem like a ray of sunshine. They brighten the whole room. The room seemed all dull and dingy just a minute ago. Exercise 88. Split up the following sentences into short, simple sentences. First, the follower of Shiraj, who had often praised him to his face, now deserted him, for they hated his cruelty and also his vices. Second, the dead body of a man with a faithful dog, seated beside it, lay in the cave I entered. Third, the lion was let out of the cage for the amusement of the spectators, but instead of running at Adrosel to devour him, it fawned upon him. Fourth, the faithful dog began to keep guard over a treasure which his absent master had left behind him in a hurry through mistake. Fifth, the examinations will commence next week and will be held in the town hall, which is the most convenient place and where they have been always held, because no other hall would contain so many candidates. Sixth, but when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Seventh, the ship which was driven ashore by the strong wind struck against the sand and remained fixed there for some days. Eighth, he taught us that it is the duty of every man to love his neighbors and help them to the best of his power. Ninth, when I was in my native village during the summer vacation, I often went to the houses of the poor people to know the difficulties they suffered from. 10th, history says that Socrates, when he was given the cup of hemlock, continued to talk to the friends who were standing around him as he drank it. 11th, hearing that he was not able to accompany me because he was ill with fever, I gave up the idea of going to Devghar. 12th. Afraid of facing the danger that awaited him there, he left the place in the darkness of night and escaped into a village not far off. 13th. Among the many boys present there, only he had the courage to agree to the proposal of going out in search of the animal. 14th. As soon as he left the club, he was seized by two men who forced him into a taxi and drove him into a house which he had never seen before and which he suspected was the headquarters of the gang he was trying to track down. 15th. In the early 19th century, Sir Walter Scott, the pride of Scotland and the favourite of all enthusiastic readers, compelled the admiration of all in the continent of Europe. 16th. The people who lived there has no pity for the poor and treated any traveller who was plainly dressed badly, setting their dogs on him and even throwing stones at him. 17th. A farmer fixed a net in his field with the object of catching the cranes which came to eat corn he had recently sown there. 18th. Yesterday I saw a grocer severely beat on the head of a dog that had a leather collar on, with the owner's name inscribed because it had run into his shop. 19th. A poor young girl who was going to sell her clothes to buy food for her mother, who was ailing, approached the king, whom she had never seen. Page number 448. 20th. As it was evening, I was much afraid of going through the forest that was infested with robbers, for I feared I might be waylaid. 21st. An old gardener, coming from the next village, planted some apples in my uncle's gardens, and all of them were on the side border. 22nd. When she had conducted me to her hut, where she told me to remain for the night, and found me hungry, she gave me for supper a fine fish which she had procured from outside. 23rd. One early morning, years ago, being attacked by a crowd, I stepped across the street to find that a man had been arrested by a policeman because he was very much intoxicated. 24th. As the weather was bad and threatened to become worse, we stayed at home because, though our journey was not yet completed, we did not desire to be drenched with rain. 25th. Thus they travelled till they come together to a waste and ruinous cottage, where the men proposed to dress some part of the sheep which their companion was carrying. 26th. When the three villains saw the king asleep, they made signs to each other, and, rising up at once, drew their swords with the purpose of killing him. Punctuation. Article 571. Definition of punctuation. Punctuation is the art of dividing sentences by points or stops so as to make the meaning clear. The principal marks or stops are called comma, semicolon, colon, full stop or period, note of interrogation, note of exclamation, quotation mark, apostrophe, dash, brackets, hyphen, parenthesis, asterisk. Comma. Article 572. The comma, the shortest and most frequently used of all marks, is used first between words of the same part of speech or phrases of similar character. Page number 449. Second, between repeated words like I will never, comma, never go there, full stop. Third, between nouns or pronouns or phrases in apposition like Kishore, comma, my brother, comma, said this, full stop. Second, Akbar, comma, Emperor of India, comma, invaded Mewar. Fourth, before and after the nominative of address. Friends, comma, listen to me, full stop. I ask you, comma, boys, comma, to behave properly, full stop. Fifth, after an absolute construction. Like, the sun having set, comma, we left the place, full stop. Dinner over, comma, the guests departed, full stop. To tell you the truth, comma, I consider him a fool, full stop. Sixth, to indicate the omission of a verb. Like, virtue leads to happiness. Vice, virtue leads to happiness, semicolon, vice, comma, to misery, full stop. Seventh, to mark off adverbial clauses or phrases and also participle phrases that might be expanded into clauses. Like, in order that you may succeed, comma, I shall help you with money, full stop. Saral, comma, after he had left the place, comma, went direct to the magistrate, full stop. Ram, comma, having returned home, comma, went to see him. Disappointed of the prize, comma, he left the place. Note, when the adverbial phrase or clause follows the principal clause, the comma is often omitted, particularly when the phrase or clause is a short one, like, I was glad when I saw you, full stop. He came after I had left, full stop. Eighth, before and after words, phrases or clauses let into the body of the sentences. Like, this, comma, then, comma, is my story, full stop. I shall, comma, however, comma, help you, full stop. He came, comma, to the surprise of all, full stop. A tiger, comma, 2 meter long, comma, was shot. Ninth, between coordinate clauses and different subjects connected by and or between coordinate clauses with the same subject connected by some other conjugation, like he is ill, comma, and his father too is away. He is away now, comma, but will return shortly, full stop. Note, but when the clauses have the same subject connected by and, no comma need be used, like, I came and found him asleep. 10th, to mark off noun clauses and adjective clauses, only when there is only when there is more than one. Page number 450. Like, I do not know where he is, comma, when he will come, comma, or what his present state is, full stop. He stood first in the examination, comma, got a scholarship, comma, and has now joined the Presidency College. Note, A single adjective clause is not separated from its noun or pronoun unless it is rather lengthy. The dog I bought has died. But the man, comma, who promised to help me if I would approach him, comma, has gone now. 11th. After a long and complex noun clause used as subject, like that his brother, who has done so much for the club, will be elected its secretary, is known to all. That his brother, who has done so much for the club, will be elected its secretary, comma, is known to all. 12th. Often to mark of a relative clause used in a continuative sense, like I saw your brother, comma, who told me this, full stop. 13th. To mark of a quotation, he said, comma, inverted commas, I can do it. Semicolon. Article 573. The semicolon denotes a longer pause than the comma and is used between coordinate clauses. First, when they are not joined by conjugations, like to err is human, semicolon, to forgive, comma, divine, full stop. I have heard his statement, semicolon, it is an improbable story, full stop. Second, when they are joined by conjugations expressing contrast or inference like therefore, yet, then, however, so, otherwise, like he is ill, semicolon, therefore he cannot come, full stop. He helped me to his best, semicolon, yet I failed in my attempt, full stop. He did not work hard, semicolon, so he could not succeed, full stop. Third, when the parts are divided by commas, in the bracket, here a semicolon is required because the comma has been already used to indicate a smaller division, like the boy, comma, who has stood first in the examination, comma, was given a very good prize, semicolon, and it is expected, comma, this will encourage him to exert himself still more to keep up his position. Colon. Article 574. The colon denotes a longer pause than the semicolon and is used first after a statement complete in itself when it is followed by another statement or series of statements connected with it without a conjugation by way of example, enumeration, cause, result, or contrast. Like examples of nouns of common gender are parent, sovereign, child. Examples of nouns of common gender are colon, parent, comma, sovereign, comma, child, full stop. Send me the following goods, colon, a good pen, comma, some paper, comma, one knife, full stop. They were without provision, colon, they suffered a good deal. He stood first, colon, I stood last, full stop. Second, sometimes to introduce a quotation in the bracket, often with a dash, like he said, colon, inverted commas, of all my friends, comma, you are the best, full stop, inverted comma, finish. Full stop or period. Article 575.